What is good, all you cool cats and kittens? This is your Commissioner Tim back on your screen for the Week 8 Power Rankings. I'm looking to do all of the content for this week ad lib. Gonna try to copy the great Commissioner Brandon, trying to go off the cuff in one take. Obviously, spent a lot of time preparing that video on the proposals for the 2023 seasons. And not gonna necessarily have the time today to be able to put together a video that follows the standard of the last every single week we've had it since the season started this year. But I definitely don't want to miss a week of power ranking, so I wanted to make sure this video gets out to you. So we'll stay on this one slide, and it'll just be me talking head about some of the exciting things that happened in week 7. So lots of exciting things, obviously. High packed. I mean, not just for our league, but lots of needle moving things, especially when it comes to injuries that we got to see in week 7. That really has probably changes to a lot of season long implications. I gotta give a huge shout out to the probably the biggest upsetter of the season so far in Huge Didga. Not only did he score, I believe, his season high, obviously, but also season high max points for, but it was all by a massively large margin at 158. And got to give kudos to you because Huge Dicka actually pulled off the league high for this week as well, which, by the way, means that this is also the first week that Cup to Canada was not able to place in the top 3 of the week's, league's output for that week. So it was an incredible week by Huge Ditka, and it was also a week where we've seen over the last 48 hours the amount of the trade volumes that's happening. So I think we're going to look back at week 7 as basically the turning point around the inflection point, at least, of a lot of the teams in terms of what they decided to do for this season. Last season we saw it a little late, around late October or so, but this season, we're already seeing it here. I guess it is late October, so we're seeing it now with week 7. Full Jerry, we've seen a lot of the trades by Mr. Ambassador and Huge Ditka now being a buyer, sitting at 3 and 4. So just talking about the standings, we're looking at still Montemir Cats. Congratulations, remaining undefeated. But what a sweep of the first leg of the season, and going to be heading into a competitive second leg of the season. He's going to have a lot of matchups. This upcoming week is really interesting as he faces probably the hottest team of them all, besides the man himself, Montemir Cat, sitting at 7-0, is he's going to be facing Huge Ditka. Sleeper projections obviously has it, leaning a lot towards Montemir Cat's side, but that game is going to be really interesting in terms of the implications that we're going to be able to see. But so we got Montemir Cat sitting at 7-0. 2 teams now, Trust Process and Brady Star Dynasty, sitting at 5-2. I think both teams are going to be pretty comfortable in the playoff. Really, right now, I think the only team that potentially is in danger for a playoff spot now is Cup to Canada at 4-3 after that unfortunate loss to Brady Stewart Dynasty. But I think it's still a large margin away between him and Huge Ditka, who's now just a game behind. But lots of things can happen, certainly, for sure. And we've got Mr. Ambassador and Huge Jerry, 4 straight losses after a strong 2-1 season start. Now they're sitting at 2-5, and obviously we saw Mr. Ambassador moving early to sort of get the bag in terms of his trading away his players and trying to make moves happen as quickly as possible so he can try to sort of drum up for future seasons. Full Jerry's citing his intent that that's what he wants to do as well, but we'll see what kind of values are out there to be captured, especially after Bill's Mafia took a huge gap. And we saw Huge Ditka sort of doing that, and now Mr. Ambassador coming in and sweeping up whatever's left. Really, I think all but breadcrumbs are available for Full Jerry now. But it's going to be interesting what we sort of see. Okay, so that said, let's sort of go into the overall sort of power rankings. I think There's now three teams. I'll say there's a very clear bottom two. And probably I can put three in here as well. But you can imagine, obviously, at the bottom, number 8, we're going to continue to roll with Bills Mafia here. Especially with how we're seeing huge Ditka sort of gain positioning on the bottom teams. I have a hard time seeing Bills Mafia pulling off another victory. That said, he was able to get Jalen Hurts, which is going to be a difference maker in some of the weeks that he goes off. I think Bills Mafia is still going to be able to get 1, maybe 2 wins this season. Maybe 1, but it's probably going to be between the wins that he is able to secure on the next 2 teams that I'll talk about. At number 7, I've got now Mr. Ambassador, especially with all the assets that he's traded away. Sergey's obviously made a conscious decision to not want to look to compete for this season, and I believe he's still got some trade pieces that he's looking to move off of. So I don't think he's done moving here yet in terms of building for the future and accruing future assets, which obviously means that it's going to be inversely correlated to the rest of the season rankings and power outlook. So I put Mr. Ambassador there at number 7. Number 6, I've got Full Jerry, who has now just pulled 4 straight weeks at sub 90 points, I believe. And while he hasn't traded away the teams yet, I'm still putting him above Mr. Ambassador just because of that point. That we saw Mr. Ambassador probably with an argument maybe a stronger roster last week, but he's already made the trades away to accrue his future assets. So I got Full Jerry number 7, number 6. And then number 5, I got Huge Dicka. So that bottom 3 teams, by the way, the Full Jerry at 6, Mr. Ambassador at 7, Bills Mafia at 8. That's the tanking. I'm out of playoffs. I don't even care about upsets anymore. I just want to get your draft picks and move on with my life tier. And we've got the only one other team, I think, that's a potential contender for playoffs, which is Huge Ditka now. He's rolled 3 straight. And it was an impressive victory over Sergey, right? And it wasn't just off of 1 or 2 points. Ditka did it with a league-leading 158 points. And we've seen some moves of what Ditka's been able to sort of pull off in terms of the players that he's brought in since his win. I think he was very excited about getting that win. He's very close. Obviously, the big one that he's able to get right off the bat has been Joe Mixon. He also got Zeke for a trade off of Sergey as well, which I thought was pretty costly sending a second over. But, he's immediately improved his roster strength for the rest of the season off of these 2 moves alone. And I think the running back position has been Travis's probably the most challenging position. But now, especially if we end up seeing Joe Burrow go off the way that he did, which unlocked a whole different of a tier than what was, imagined for him. Beyond just, the touchdowns. He had 481 yards in the air. He's obviously got enough talent around him in the skilled positions for him to go off. Obviously, it was against Atlanta, who's got a very soft sort of defense for quarterbacks. But Joe Burrow's got a very, very easy second half of the season. I believe he's got one of the easiest second half of the season strength of schedule. And if Joe Burrow is able to come off and maybe become a top 3 type of a quarterback, and if Aaron Rodgers, is able to sort of put up at least a top 12 type of number, he's number 17 right now, Aaron Rodgers is, this team gets really interesting, especially with the addition of Joe Mixon and Zeke, and the continued sort of breakout of Chris Olave, and the more usage around Tyler Algier. I think this team is still pretty soft in terms of what could potentially go wrong, just because of how thin the players are at the moment. But certainly bringing players like Deontay Johnson helps. The player that I want to definitely look for, and I think that will make a difference, is Tyler Algier. He's a rookie, obviously getting some burn. He hasn't been able to put up that many crazy points yet, and not necessarily showing it on the field yet with efficiency. But if is the genie out of the bottle? It's not like he's really showed off yet, but if he's able to continue to put up these types of sort of 60% plus snap share, even when Cordero Patterson comes back, which I think is highly unlikely, then that becomes really, really massive in terms of, needle moving things that he can expect. But other than that, I think 4-putt's intriguing for sure. I just want to run through a couple scenarios. This week's obviously going to be really, really important. I don't want to say it's a must win just because there's so many things that could be happening, but this week with against Moncton Meerkats, if somehow he's able to pull off that victory, Cup to Canada and Trust the Process also go up against each other this week as well. And with Cup to Canada sitting at 4-3, we could be potentially looking at a tied Cup to Canada and Huge Ditka after week 8. Both teams sitting at 4-4. So there's a lot of scenarios in the works. And then the other thing that could also happen is week 9. Full Ditka and Trust the Process go up against one another as well. So there's a lot of things that are sort of plausible. And I love that there's a race that's actually heating up because just even a couple of weeks ago, it looked like it was just tuning out. But I think there could be potential ways that this sort of, comes into situation. That's going to be really, really interesting for us to sort of, watch. Okay, so separately, that's number 5. And obviously we go into what I will continue to call this playoff likely tier. At number 4, I'm putting myself, so it's a down, moving down a spot. I think I should have probably moved myself down a spot last week, but I definitely am doing that now, especially with the injury to Breece Hall. My team's, injury just ridden. It's half to basically the players that we were counting on are either not able to play because of positions or just physically unable to perform because of injuries. Players like Kyle Pitts, who just is not seeing time on my starters. Players like Javonte Williams and now Breece Hall. It's just really, really unfortunate to see these things happening, especially Breece Hall was such a talented player. And thankfully, I don't want to say ACL is a minor injury by any means, but with modern medicine, players come back from ACLs all the time. It's just the addition to the ACL tears, how much has been, further damaged. But it seems like it's just been a minor meniscus damage on top of the ACL tear. So I am expecting Breece Hall to be able to come back and start performing next season. He's probably not going to be able to perform at the rate that he did next season. But certainly by his third year in the season, especially when I believe my team's going to be really gearing up full speed at that point, Breece Hall should be really, really coming in and kicking gears. He put up one of the most promising first 7 games of a rookie that you could ever expect in a running back. So I'm excited for him. I still feel really good about my playoff chances given the 5-2 standing, and also the biggest boon I got lucky that Breece Hall continued to sort of perform when Javonte Williams sort of stepped out with injury. And then now, with Breece Hall getting out injury, I think I got lucky that Travis Etienne is basically now the de facto RB1 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He really showed it in Week 7 when he took a 80% plus snap share and left James Robinson with 0 touches, which is incredible to see. I never thought they would do James Robinson like that. But here's Travis Etienne. He's still he's a rookie by all accounts, just because this is his first full season. And he's still making sort of dumb mistakes, but I'm excited to see what this cat does. With more of a sort of a higher end usage at 80%, he's probably not getting all the goal line and short downs as well. So it's going to be really, really interesting. And now that James, with DeAndre Swift back, he's fully practicing now. And hopefully Jonathan Taylor is able to get the volume that he does, because at least his efficiency numbers are back to where it was last year. But, if Matty Ice is now getting benched, hopefully this means that they're going to just let their skill player positions do what they do. Just feed Jonathan Taylor the ball and use that as a play action to set up for Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce. But I think both of those things were notable sort of positives to my roster that we saw in Week 7. Sitting at 5-2, I think it's still a good sort of playoff sort of outcome there, likelihood. And I hate doing this, but I'm going to move down Eve to 3 now. Again, I don't think this represents how I think about his actual strength and roster strength when fully healthy and, give it a 10-game series, for example. I think he's still the best, if not the second best in our league with the roster that he has. But we're, going to week 8. He's sitting at 4-3, just a game behind the game ahead of the 5th seed at the moment. And so records and playoff likelihood really makes a big difference to the power rankings, especially now until we get some, that out of the way. And he's playing against me just to process this week. It's going to be a big week, but if he sees another 0-2 start like he did in that first leg of the season and brings him down to 4-4, I think, things start to get a little bit concerning for Cup to Canada. Hopefully he's going to be one of those players that tries to figure out how to enter the sweepstakes of, Full Jerry and Mr. Ambassador trying to sort of sell off their pieces, even though Cup to Canada doesn't really have any draft picks. Maybe there's some trades that he can sort of get in there. But I've got Cup to Canada at number 3. I think it was sad to sort of see a loss last week. And tell you what, Eve is just making this game really, really interesting. That I think his team should theoretically be a runaway. You can make the argument that he should have just as good of a record as Moncton Meerkats does in terms of his season sort of points for output and how consistent he's been. But who knows? Maybe we're starting to sort of see the wear and tear of some of these players. I think the loss obviously definitely came because of the Lenny Fournette issue, just not getting any volume. But he's got enough players that can sort of fill in the meantime there for sure. All right, and number 2, that means that we're moving up Brady Stewart Dynasty. And I'm moving him up to 4 because a lot really has to do with the record. I still think the strength of roster power that Brady Stewart Dynasty has is probably not 3rd and 4th in a separate tier, in the 2nd tier that's separate, that's on the same tier as I think Trust the Process. But just playoff odds and pulling off an incredible victory with Cup to Canada, I think, and also the fact that he's going to be going up against Full Jerry, which is probably going to easily put him to 6-2. Those are just all good omens for playoff likelihood and him just getting in. So I think right now I've got Brady Stewart Dynasty at 90% over 90% on playoff likelihood, and that leaves it for. Again, the number 1 for 5 straight weeks now, Moncton Meerkats. There's literally no other team that makes sense to even consider putting here. So it's a perfect 7-0. I love that. I think that's a huge fucking standard he's set for all of us in the league to aspire to. The fact that you can actually have a clean stretch for a leg of a season. Now the challenge is going to be, can he stay and repeat that for the second leg of the season? I think a lot of the managers are gunning for it. They see the standard now. They see the pace that Kyle is setting for the league at large. I just still look forward to this week between him and Huge Ditka. I think Lamar Jackson just looks very human right now. And if there is ever a time to be able to beat Kyle, is when Lamar Jackson looks human. Now I think some of that has to do with Rashad Bateman just not having played at all. And so there's Devin Duvernay is great, but that's Devin Duvernay. So I think a lot has to do with maybe just passing, just not necessarily being able to be there for Lamar to open things up on the ground game for him. But if this is a game that I'm really, really looking forward to, I think that's going to be the matchup. I think it's going to have incredible season-long implications because Kyle doesn't matter if he loses, but if Travis wins, we're talking about some incredible things to set up for the second half of the season. So anyways, that does it. Hopefully everything sort of made sense. Going ad lib here on a 20-minute video. And I don't know if this video is going to come out before or after the proposal video for the season proposal for 2023, but make sure you vote, and then feel free to sort of send in your questions if you have any things you want to talk about or get further clarifications on and things like that. Anyways, good luck Thursday, Sunday, and Monday, boys. Peace.